It is Wrestling Observer Radio. Garrett and Dave here on a Friday, the 4th of July, and we have a special guest, a returning guest, someone who's got a big match next week, Kenny Omega. How's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, I am a returning guest. It's been quite a number of appearances now. How many times has it been by now?
I don't know.
5, 6 or
probably so? Something like that. I mean, I know that like you were our most popular guest ever since the days of Bruno Sammartino, who was our previous most popular guest.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay.
But because of a number of issues, I mean, and mostly just like there's the period where, you had the major health issues and I didn't want to bother you with the show at when you were, at that point. And then, just getting ready to just the perfect time, which is before, I guess, this big show, to just do this again. But I mean, there's like a lot, like going back. I mean, like tell us a little bit, I guess, about like just the recovery from everything that you went through, in the last deal, because it was like, I just remember it was like November 2023, and all of a sudden, like I saw the show, the Dynamite show, and you didn't look healthy. And Brian actually brought it up and just said that you were really hurting backstage. And then like I think it was the next day or maybe the day after, and I'm getting like, you're fighting for your life. And it was just like, and the description reminded me, because I went through something. I had peritonitis when I was 33.
Oh.
And it's not what you had, but the situation, I guess, was similar, because when they were describing what you were going through, it was like identical to me. Like literally you're laying there and you're going like, I mean, my temperature really spiked, to 106 and a half. But it was like one of those things where I'm sitting there and I can hear the doctors, I'm conscious, and they're going like, if it gets worse, he's not going to make it. And you're just sitting there just going like, if I fall asleep, I may not wake up. So, I mean, it's a really mentally tough thing to go through. And I just thinking that you were going through something very, very similar.
Yeah, really. And I never really understood the severity of it until they kind of came clean with the dirty details. I remember that day, the memory of it's pretty vivid still.
You'll remember the rest of your life. I'll just let you know.
Yeah. I told everyone beforehand, I said, hey guys, like, look, I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe there's a flu going around. I might have COVID again or something, but I really don't feel reliable right now. I feel like I could just keel over and have to go into the fetal position, because when these pains hit, it's really bad. I said, I look at myself in the mirror. I said, I feel like really pale, really blue. And I said, but I would hate to really cancel on you guys for a reason that ended up not being something too serious. So they said, okay, well, we need to make sure that you're not obviously positive for COVID. So let's test for that. And I was not, it wasn't COVID. So I said, okay, well, if it's not that, if I don't feel like I'm going to spread something around the locker room, maybe I could just gut it out and I'll be okay. And I remember showing up, and I went to the makeup ladies, and I said, like, hey guys, can we do something about me not looking as pale and as ghastly as I do right now? And they said, yeah, we'll do what we can. I said, yeah, just give me some color. And I remember they did what they could. And then I still see and usually it's for non-flattering pieces about me, where they'll always use a picture from when I was at my most sick, where they'll turn up from like a dirt sheet somewhere. They'll always use, and that's right then I'll know, like, okay, these guys have an axe to grind. Using like peak diverticulitis Kenny Omega photos just to make me look like the biggest bag of shit in the world. But I see it on my face. I had so much bronzing makeup on, but I was still pale. And my lips were blue and purple. And I remember even asking for a heating pack just because my stomach was just ice cold. And it was like, it felt like, it was sort of like a bubbly type of feeling. The muscles were contracting, it was a terrible feeling. So I remember having it was like a heating pad or meant for like a shoulder injury. But I was just kind of like clutching onto it like backstage. And I'm like, oh, and I was kind of doing like the old mankind, when he was sitting in the corner and you kind of like rock back and forth. I'm doing that with this device. And it's like, okay, music hits. All right, let's just do it. Frisbee it aside, and I went out. And I remember being in that ring, and there's sort of a little bit of a format that we laid out, but it was just so tough to stick to it because it was a battle of will. It was a mental struggle of don't fall over, don't pass out, just hang on, like get through this one segment. And, we'll get home and we'll rest and we'll be okay. I'll probably be fine tomorrow. And I told the doc right after, I said like, hey, I'm not feeling too great. I'm not really one to say like, hey, I don't feel great. Let's go to the hospital right now. Not many of us are in the wrestling business. But he said, okay, you know what? I do have a friend that I can refer you to. We'll send you there and we'll just get you checked out. And he had a lot of concerns when as soon as I had seen him. And I guess I'd failed a lot of tests that he had put me through on that day. And I remember going home, getting a call about an hour and a half later. And they'd said, yeah, do you mind coming back and just being prepared to stay in the hospital for quite a while? And I'd said, if that's what we need, then that's what we'll do. And I said, I'll pack a bag, like a little gym bag, and I'll head to you guys tomorrow, like first thing. They said, no, like you need to come now. And I said, oh, come on now. It's like, I just got home. Like, at least let me I'm kind of in pain and stuff. Is it okay if I just rest, take it easy, and then show up? And they're like, well, we don't want to like worry you or anything, but you could be at risk of dying. So like, you need to come in. Okay, all right.
Man.
Gate's closed. I'll be right there.
Man.
So yeah, and then that sort of was the start of a bit of a process. And I remember you just said, how difficult was it to struggle back and to get myself into a position where I felt like I could do it again. And I wouldn't say, of course it was difficult. I was actually just looking at the pictures the other day of right after the surgery, and I had lost so much weight, so much muscle was gone from my body. I remember not having any core stability. Of course, levels of power, endurance, stamina, they're just all gone. And they had said, hey, have no expectation. Just go into this thing, into your recovery, being happy with any positive improvement. And that actually helped to hear that. Not to be too hard on myself or to beat myself up over not seeing immediate improvement or having a specific date in mind where I have to be ready by this date. I have to be 100% by this date. I need to be the person that everyone's expecting me to be within exactly a year from now or whatever. So that did help. And to kind of go at my own pace, to feel myself improve with small increments and not beat myself up over it if I didn't feel like I was making headway. And I remember as soon as I got myself into a position where I felt like, yeah, maybe I can do this again. And the Tokyo Dome show came and went, and I was extremely happy with it. And I thought like, well, if that's the last one ever for me, then boy, I'm satisfied with that. And it gets to a point now where you're thankful for every next performance that you can have. And I'm still sort of there. I'm always counting my blessings, and I'm always very thankful that when I have a performance that I feel does not disappoint fans or myself, it's something to hang my hat on. So that's where I'm at right now, I guess.
It's interesting. It's funny because I'm kind of like, you're kind of like reliving, what I remember. I was, the day that I got the call, I had a test done that morning because I'd been sick for a couple of weeks. And one of the things that you had told me before was that I think that one of the things that hurt you was the fact that as a wrestler, you kind of live in pain, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you were getting all this pain, it was kind of like maybe a normal person would just like rush to the hospital, and you were just kind of like, you know, you had the wrestler mentality of just gutting it out. And in my situation, I was supposed to go to Japan, like literally like in 2 weeks. This is 93.
Oh, there's no way you wanted to cancel it, boy. And that was like the absolute peak.
93 tag team, All Japan tag team tournament, Takada Vader. There's some big New Japan. I mean, it was this week of incredible stuff. I was meeting with a bunch of friends, and you know, my mom is kind of getting worried because I'm 102 fever. Well, no, let me take that back. I said 100.5 fever for like 2 weeks, and I go, so I can go to Japan and be a little bit, you know, I mean, I did it, you know, I worked the whole time. I can go to Japan and do this. And then the morning I wake up to go, is everybody still there? Okay.
Yep.
The morning I wake up to go, I take my fever. It's 102, and I go, 102 already. Maybe not the best idea. Maybe I should go see a doctor since it's been like 2 weeks. And what had happened was on about 2 weeks earlier, my what's called my appendix burst. Whoa. And I went in. I was in incredible pain when my appendix burst.
Yeah.
And I went in. I was playing Trivial Pursuit, and I was killing it. And then all of a sudden, my appendix burst in the middle of the game, and I couldn't think, and all that. I just remember that I was at some friend's house that were about 40 minutes away. So I'm driving home in this ridiculous pain, thinking my appendix burst. Go to the hospital first thing. They take tests, and they go, "You probably strained your abdominal, you know, like working out or something." And they took these tests, and that you don't have, you know, your appendix didn't burst. And a day or two later, I started feeling, you know, I had pain, but it wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'm going through the whole, you know, 2 weeks. I'm kind of under the weather, but whatever. Then the day I was supposed to leave for Japan, like it's 102. So I go into the hospital, and you know, they take some tests, and I go home, and I'm packing and everything. And they call me, and they just go, you know, you got to get to the hospital. So when you said that, it just reminded me, you got to get to the hospital. I said, okay, I'll come in a couple hours. And they go, you don't understand. You've got to go to the hospital right now. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, you have, you know, you have peritonitis. So I look up peritonitis, and it's like, I'm just sitting there going like, I may die. And it was like the weirdest feeling. And, you know, and that was, you know, like, again, like I think about that constantly. You know, it's like one of those things. But now, in for you, you know, it was a long recovery period. There was like, again, you even kind of mentioned here that going into the Tokyo Dome, like that was a real test for you, but also a feeling like, you know, maybe this is it. And since then, you know, you've wrestled several matches, and you've basically been incredible across the board. You know, I would say, I mean, I have people who say that, like, you know, you're the most outstanding wrestler for the first 6 months of the year, in a year where there's a lot of freaking great competition for that.
It blows my mind, actually. Yeah, it's very a great thing, though, you know, where there's so much top level competition and incredible performances on a week-to-week basis. Whether it be in America, Japan, Mexico, it's happening everywhere, where there's just whether it be the booking or just wrestlers working well with each other or just being on their game, everyone has really turned it up several notches this year. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, when you go with that, one thing that I've noticed is that I think that from the AEW standpoint, you know, I mean, Tony, we all know it's a strength or a weakness depending on how you put it. As far as the television shows, like he puts matches on television every week to be great matches. I mean, he's looking at it, and it's like, you know, it's like I'm, you know, they're put together at the last minute, and I look and go like, God, I wish I knew about this for a week, but I'm sure it's going to be great. And then you watch the show itself.
Months, yeah.
I mean, the TV itself for those 2 hours is great almost every week. And then the bringing in, you know, the CMLL, different style and everything.
Yeah.
But bringing those guys in, and then the show that you missed in Mexico, but just the whole thing of the guys going there and their guys coming, and CMLL being so hot with these, you know, young guys that are trying all these new things that are just incredible. And it's like that aspect of in-ring is just so phenomenal right now. But you know, I mean, there's other aspects to the game. Sometimes I think that there's other aspects to the game that, you know, like what with some of the younger guys, I keep thinking like, okay, like, you know, you're great bell to bell, but the thing that's going to make you stand out, because everyone is you've got to, you know, like the mental aspect of doing the match that you're really good at, that you're maybe the best at. And then the other aspect is obviously there's the promo work. You know, you got to work as hard on the promos because you know, you have to stand out. I mean, like you coming back, I mean, you're not the same wrestler that you were. You're a different wrestler. I think from like the Gabe Kid match was a different kind of an excellent match. I noticed, you know, you're doing a lot more boxing footwork stuff that you did, and Kota Ibushi did in his matches the last 2 weeks too. And it's just it feels like that there's a different approach that you're taking right now to your wrestling. Is that true?
No, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that, and it's quite observative actually that you did notice. It's as you said. I feel that in the pursuit of trying to just stay at the same pace that the younger, healthier talent are moving at, I feel in situations like that, I wouldn't be able to stand out, or oppositely, I'd be able to stand out, but I would stand out in a different kind of way, a negative way. That would be the moments where it's like, oh, geez, like Kenny really is much slower. And I try not to bring attention to that. I don't want people to feel scared or sorry for me, or I don't want anyone's opinion of a match to be hampered because I just simply can't move as consistently fast all the time. And it's not just because of the core, it's not just because of the stomach, and that the issues, even though, you know, it has been surgically repaired, there are still a number of issues that I'm working through, and it's really day to day. Like if I have a match, and let me think, when was the last match that I've had? I think it was the Anarchy in the Arena, probably.
Yeah, I think
yeah. So even just the Anarchy in the Arena match, it's like a performance like that, and not just the performance itself, but it's the process of having to do those, you know, gigantic weekend shows where you're part of the planning process. There's a lot of meet and greets and stuff like that with executives and all that. In the case that you have to sort out things like, you know, tickets and merchandise and all that, if you have a hand in that, you're working long hours, and it's not just showing up with a little carry case and like, okay, you know, I'll get changed and we'll just head out to the ring and we'll be done. There's a lot more to it, especially on the pay-per-view weekends. So after that, it's, and this is not meant to scare anybody, but I'll be in bed until like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. for almost an entire week. Special guest may be appearing. Sorry about that. I might be in bed until 5 or 6 for about 5 or 6, 7 days after that. I just don't have the energy. I can't move. And that was the most scary part for me, is, again, you know, I want to be reliable. I want to be someone that you can count on. But at the same time, I don't want to push myself beyond the breaking point, because that's how I got to the level of needing the emergency surgery to begin with. And I don't want to do it again if I can avoid it. So yeah, it's there's all sorts of difficulties right now. The big one for me is that I have these, you know, I have adhesions in my stomach, quite a few, and when you're breathing heavy, when you have to use a lot of core, when you have to twist, when you have to stretch, it's the adhesions are pulling, that are binding to my inner organs. They're pulling apart, and it's causing a lot of discomfort. It causes sort of like flu-like symptoms to emerge. And so knowing my own limits and being okay that I do have a limit and understanding of that is what's important. And again, I'm also very lucky that I have a boss that's very understanding of that. He's never going to throw me to the wolves and say like, well, I want to see a Kenny Omega match this week and you're under contract, so you better get your ass in the ring. It's never like that. My safety and my health is always paramount to the company and to everyone there, it's great to feel cared about in that regard. So I can sort of take the extra time to get this sorted out as I'm sort of getting back to where I need to be. When I'm feeling great, I feel great. And when I don't, I just don't. I know I don't have to go against the grain to get myself there. So going back to your original question, I'm trying to think about like, what can I do to stand out? What is it that I bring to the table that's a little different? Maybe because I have an understanding of how sickness affects me, how injuries affect me. I've been injured through the years, whether it be through wrestling or through the other sports that I've played. I understand how it can hinder body functions, how it may cause you to not move a certain way. And it's a lot of times it's very different than what we've been taught as wrestlers. This is how you sell an arm. This is how you sell a leg. This is how you sell a stomach or a chest or a neck. It's you do this. And that's it. You've done it. That's how you sell it. And in real life, whether it be if you're playing hockey, for example, which I had a very long career in, or my knee issues. You know what I mean? I've had 4 surgeries on my left knee already. I really have a deep understanding of what it's like when it's difficult to walk, when you can't squat, when you can't lunge, when you can't. So I know how to act and react in a different kind of way. And even though it may not be the conventional wrestler way of doing it, I feel that if you take things that you maybe have an understanding of that maybe the common person does not, or the wrestling fan or the wrestler, that allows you to stick out in a different way. And in a positive way too, I think. People need to feel what the wrestler feels, I think. I think it helps elevate a match. And I think it helps with, becoming invested in a match. And I feel that with how many younger athletes we have in AEW now, especially, and now that we are implementing more of the Lucha Libre style, of course, you're very familiar with the CMLL dudes. They can all move extremely well. That's what they're known for. And they are go, go, go. And what they do is a work of art. It's poetry in motion. Everything they do is beautiful when they are on their game. And if my goal now, coming back from major injuries and this major surgery, was to try to somehow be faster than them, fly higher than them, be more nonstop than them, I would lose. And I would be lost in the shuffle almost immediately. And people would be calling for me to just, Kenny, pack it in. Let's get out of here. You are.
I don't know about that. I think you're being
well, I don't know. I'm a little hard on myself.
You're being hard on yourself here.
Yeah. But in my mind, I'm always keeping that in the back of my mind is I will leave that to them. They are at the top of their game in that field. So what is it that I can do, that I can provide, that the fans won't have seen, earlier on in the night or afterwards? And I think it actually helps to build a more complete card in that way. I mean, I can't remember what the main event was on that particular evening, but it was a match where I wrestled Takeshita in the singles match. Mm-hmm. And I had known that there was all sorts of different kinds of matches on that day. We had that
was an incredible show.
Yeah, there were hardcore matches. I believe Ospreay had that crazy cage match.
Yep.
So I knew that we were checking a lot of boxes for different flavors of professional wrestling. So I thought, hey, if my goal now is to try to do these incredible high spots or death-defying stunts that they plan to do, I'm going to get lost in the shuffle. So what is it that I can do to provide that might make my match stand out and not disservice to Takeshita as a champion? And I got to rely on just telling the real life story. Just show. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to show how I feel, or even amplify the movements and the the emotion in my face to show that pain, to show how it may hinder my movements. I think it allowed for my match to stick out in a different kind of way. And I hope that moving forward too, I can do that. Just so that, again, as we move forward with AEW, that we have complete cards, which I think is the most exciting part of our show and our programming right now, is that we have a lot of young guys that can do some incredible things. We have some bigger dudes on our roster too, which I think we sort of had a lack of. But now we have the Bobby Lashley's, we have the Powerhouse Hobbses, we have, the Samoa Joes. So we have those boxes ticked. We have, of course we have the Will Ospreys and the Swerves and the Hangmans that are just at their physical peak right now. Takeshita, of course, another one of those guys. And now we're implementing a lot of the luchador style as well. So I feel like AEW has really become, and even now, especially with I don't know if you'd call it a merger, or just you probably know the best technical term of it, but AAA working with WWE, they are introducing a little more lucha libre into their stuff as well too, which is, I think, just great to see. In a perfect world, I would always love to show the various styles of professional wrestling so that people can develop an appreciation for it. And if it isn't what you like, then there's a chance that throughout that card, there's something that you are going to like, because it's not just going to be the same thing over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
So, for now, that's the main goal. Is number one is my health, which I wish I could say is, I try to make it number one. I'm trying to be very cognizant about that now. And everyone's really on me to be like, no, like, I want you to be healthy, and then you tell me what you want to do, which is, again, that's a huge weight off my shoulders as a performer. That is exactly what I'm doing right now. Is I'm trying to take what I've learned over the years, whether it be my jiu-jitsu, whether it be my boxing, and show things that people just aren't doing on a regular basis, in AEW, just so I can stand out and I can offer something that's unique to the cards.
I mean, well, do you have something, Garrett?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask real quick, and maybe actually not real quick, but I just for reference, I just recently watched the Tokyo Dome match with you and Okada. So the first one that originally got Dave's newsletter a lot of we have a joke because the match that broke the scale, about midway through, I was looking at him and I'm like, you understand that because of this match, you're going to have a crazy week, right?
You said
and it wasn't even done yet. Like we were halfway through, but anyway,
it was 36 minutes into the Osaka match, the last one that you had.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is actually my favorite pro wrestling match. When I did the Omega Man documentary, right. And this actually was cut from the documentary, but they were asking me about, the matches. And I said, the first one was, which is the one Garrett just watched, from Tokyo Dome. I said,
the Tokyo Dome.
When it was over, I said, like, that's probably one of the 3 best matches I've ever seen in my life. And I think I wrote that, and Steve Austin called me up. He just goes, you're shitting me. You know what I mean? And I go, no, really, it's probably one of the 3 best matches I've ever seen in my life. Because that whole thing was, that kind of blew out of control, because 6-star thing, even though I'd done it before, for whatever reason, it'd been many years since. And, but it's the great compliment to you and Okada. So he watches it and he calls me up and I go, so what do you think? And he goes, I think it was one of the 3 best matches I've ever seen. So I was watching with Garrett and several of our friends, the last match you two had in Osaka, the 2 out of 3 fall match. And it's, like 20 minutes in, it's like just phenomenal. And 36 minutes in, I remember him going like, you realize that, like, because I think that we all at that moment, in that about the 36-minute mark, we all pretty much said, like, okay, this is a lot better than the other ones. And then the other ones were all fantastic, but this one is already better. And it's like, you're going to have like this incredible week. And in the Omega Man doc, I remember when I was asked about that match, and I said, like, okay, the first match was one of the best matches I've ever seen. The other ones were as good, you know. And then the fourth one, the Osaka one, I said, like, I'm pretty sure that's the best match I will ever see, which I've never said about a match ever. And I go, I hope I'm wrong. You know, wouldn't that be wonderful if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
But I just thought it was, you know, just, you know, like I basically think I wrote that day. Someone told me this is how I wrote it. It was like, it was the two best guys in the world who both had their best match at the exact same moment. It was, you know, a moment in time that, you know, as far as a wrestling match goes, you know, I mean, hopefully someday I'll see something better. Things, you know, everyone learns, right? You know, you learn from all those different guys that preceded you, Bret Hart or AJ Styles or whatever. And, you know, you learn what they do and all that. But, yeah, that was, that match, you know, but you know, here you are, it's 7 years later and you're two very different people. And you're on, you know, the biggest US stage, you know, other than Wembley, the biggest stage AEW's ever been on, other than, you know, maybe, I don't know, you could argue the Tokyo Dome and Wembley, but one of the biggest stages you'll have ever been on in your career, this, you know, a week from tomorrow. I mean, mentally, I know that you're like a perfectionist in a lot of ways, because to be at your level, at the level of, you know, the top guys in any profession, and especially in this one, you know what I mean? You're obviously thinking about this thing. Like, mentally, where are you? What are you kind of thinking about? What are your thoughts? You know, as far as, like, you know, there's got to be pressure, you know, going in.
Yeah, no, there's a sense of pressure, and I don't think. I was worried at first because my original worry was that, okay, there's this standard that the first 4 matches have kind of developed. And for those who have seen those, they may be looking at this match as the 5th in the series, you know, so, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th just kind of happened afterwards, and it's a continuation of the story. And in that sense, I felt like, okay, well, what is it that I could possibly do now that would even touch those performances? But I sort of now have looked at the previous 4 as something where I don't want to say it's a closed book where that story has been told. But I do feel a little bit like that was very specifically a New Japan story of 2 top guys that were very much vying for that top position, where they were at their athletic peak, and it was always which one of these guys deserves to be the IWGP Heavyweight Champion the most. And now with the unified belt coming into play, of course, it harkens back to the old stuff that we have done. There's a lot of reference material to look back upon and see, okay, these guys have history. They did this, they did that, they did this. But I have to be just realistic and honest with myself. A lot of these people, actually, a lot of our fans haven't seen any of those matches. They've seen a handful of highlights, maybe. AEW did a wonderful package summing up the first 4, which was incredible. I was so happy that we were able to work with New Japan and actually get that out there for the public to see. But I think it helps to look at this as very much an AEW story where, you know, we do have the history, yes, but I don't want to be so close-minded as to just assume everybody's seen the first 4 matches. They're all fresh in everyone's mind. And this is part 5. Because I think if you do that and you make too many references or callbacks or things like that, so many minute details are going to get lost in the shuffle. And there may be wasted movement that way. There may be elements of the story that I should be hitting that I'm not hitting because I'm too focused on the past. I mean, this is already something that happened 8 years ago, you know, part 4. Close to 7. I think it's close to 7. 7 and change.
7 and change. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that's why, you know, we came up with the idea, like, let's really amp this story up. Let's make it very gratuitous and make it a little Manny Fernandez-esque. and go with that approach, so that for the people that have seen parts 1 to 4, this will complement those. But again, I don't want to be so egotistical as to say, like, if you don't know 1 to 4, then you're SOL. I'm doing this anyway in this particular way. So I think that I can stay within the AEW universe, stick with that story and lean more towards the struggle coming back from this terrible disease, the issues with Don Callis, but the fact that there is this guy who is always heralded as the greatest IWGP champion ever, the greatest tournament wrestler ever, one of the greatest Japanese professional wrestlers ever, that has history with Kenny Omega, who was one of the founders of AEW, and more stick to that end of things rather than have to focus so much on something that happened so long ago. So I think with that, it allowed me to clear my mind a little more and make me feel more confident in where I'm at today with it, with today's version of me, with today's version of Okada, with today's version of professional wrestling. And the fact that AEW and AEW's fan base and the American fan base is going to be a little bit different than what you would get at a Tokyo Dome or an Osaka Joe Hall or Kraken Hall or Budokan, whatever. It's going to be different. And I'm absolutely going to challenge myself. And I did that with every one of the matches. If you look at part 1, 2, 3, 4, they're drastically different stories. And I'm going to challenge myself again in this matchup to tell another different story. And who knows? I always went into each and every one of those matches throwing a Hail Mary and being willing to fail. But if we do knock it out of the park and make people feel something, then I feel that I would have done our mission, and I feel that we would have done something that is respectful to the matches that we've done before, but also is a brand new episode to the series. But also, if it's unique to AEW fans and AEW fans alone, then it can stand alone as just a great match as well. So that's my approach.
Let me ask one follow-up and then you can go, Dave.
Yeah.
Because you guys got to exactly what I was getting to, but you said something that was really interesting about the audience, the AEW audience, possibly not seeing those matches, which I completely agree with you about. I think there's a lot of people who they're aware of them, but they may not have actually sat down and watched them. I was thinking back because I didn't even watch the first one live because I didn't have New Japan World yet. And so I had to go back and watch it. But
right, and just to butt in here, like your job is essentially to analyze and talk about professional wrestling, and you hadn't seen it.
Right.
So why then would I be so egotistical to assume that just a casual fan would have seen every single one of those matches? It would be insane of me to do so. I think that would be a fruitless endeavor for me to just go, okay, I'm going in with the assumption that match 1, 2, 3, 4 are fresh in everyone's minds, and everything that I do is going to be a callback and reference point to that. That would be silly, to say the least.
And so you mentioned the match with Gabe Kidd. Now that is in front of the New Japan audience.
Yep.
Who knows your work in a specific way. And then this match is going to be in front of the AEW audience, which we just mentioned is possibly a little bit different. Like, do you go through the New Japan version of Kenny Omega? Do you have a different relationship with the audience as you go into the match as you would with the AEW audience going into this match with Okada?
A little bit. So with the Gabe Kid match, I always, I don't want to say have a plan A and B. I may have a plan A through D, A through Z, but I thought, what are the chances that there's going to be a large chunk of this crowd that not only doesn't know who I am or wasn't there for anything that I have done in 2018, but what if they actually look at me as kind of an invader? What if they're looking at me as this foreign entity that's coming in and is part of the reason why their guys have been, poached and stolen from New Japan? What if I'm looked upon as the bad guy in this match, even though Gabe Kidd was technically a heel in the matchup? And so I had to be open-minded to that possibility. And so I created moments and outs in certain moments to go along with that story as well. And I am so glad that I did, because when I started to feel the atmosphere of the crowd and I started to feel the people shifting and wanting to cheer for the heart that Gabe was showing as the representative of New Japan, rather than, oh my God, I'm so happy Kenny's back, I was able to live more in that moment than to just stay hard-headed and go, no, like, I'm the guy that came back to New Japan. I'm the star. I'm the guy that people should be happy to see because I haven't been here in X amount of years. I think that's really what wrestling at a higher level needs to be. You need to have a less focus on the choreography of it and the planning of it, and be more open-minded to the feeling and the atmosphere of it as well. And especially when you're in a large-scale arena or a stadium, you can feel it in the air, and it's always a very good indication as to where you're at with the people, where you're at with the fans in that very moment, and possibly how everyone is feeling at home as well, because that is going to be probably one of the larger live houses you're going to have. So a big chunk of people that are collecting from all over to come watch this big match, they represent not only your core fan base that watches everything that you do, but they're also going to represent some casuals that maybe this is their first show and they decided to pull the trigger on watching their first show because, well, there's this huge wrestling match in town. I think I'll check it out. Wrestling's cool, or wrestling could be fun. Hey, let's take the kids. Let's take my buddies. We'll just go see. We'll go watch it. And I think to be cognizant of that always, and then feel it in the air, feel it throughout your movements, feel it while you're selling or while you're on offense, it allows for you to make those shifts in the road and or course correct when you have to. So yeah, with the Gabe Kid match, like I said, I'm so glad that I decided to be open-minded about that, and I wasn't hard-headed about it, and that it wasn't like a selfish endeavor where it was like I'd said before, like I did have it in my mind, the possibility that it could be my last one. So I wasn't making it all about me. This is possibly my last match, so this has to be like the Tyson Smith. It has to be whatever his embodiment of a happy end needs to be. No, I'm so proud and happy that it ended up being more of an emotional story, of a coming to age story for Gabe Kid. And I'm very, very glad we went in that direction in the end with it, just through very like small little changes live as we were there living it and doing it.
I will say that when we were watching that match, and Dave, I'm sure felt the same way. I used to do this with a lot of big boxing matches when I was younger, where your favorite boxer, do they still have it? Can they win? And so you kind every time the next round happens, you kind of sit up, and for like the first 5 to 10 minutes of that match, we were kind of sitting up because we wanted to see how you were doing, right? Because there's also this little bit of like, you're not really worried that if you can do the match. We knew that you were going to do the match, but you're thinking about all these different things. Is he as good as he wants to be? And all, when you think about some of the favorite people that you enjoy watching. And so we were like, after about, the first, I think Dave even screamed at when you guys went to the outside, like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? But then as the match went and you guys had the terrific match, which, I think is one of the best matches of the year, we kind of like settled down and we're like, okay, like he is here. He is back. He's doing the thing that he wants to do. And I think that's kind of what I remember the most, is that nervous energy in the first 10 minutes and then going like, okay, he's fine. Like this thing is rocking. So that's just from you're talking about from a performance standpoint, the things that you're dealing with as a fan watching it, or as someone who's interested in this stuff watching it. There was that emotion for me as well as we were watching you do your thing.
And that's really For me, that's the magic of it. That's what I'm hoping to elicit in every performance that or every big match performance, which now it's funny. I feel like, now that I'm getting up there and my performances will be a little more limited in amount, I really do value each and every singular performance. And I really hope that every single one of them means something, because the ones that don't mean anything, it's like chipping away at what's left, and there isn't much left. So I want to make sure that what is left and what the meat that is on the bone still, that it's a good tasting meat, hopefully.
I mean, you're talking like, I mean, do you, what are your thoughts as far as your future goes? I mean, because it's like you're in a business where everybody talks retirement and nobody ever does, if you know what I mean. And you can do it at a high level now. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You proved that in every match this year, since you've been back. But at the same time, you pay for the performance afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's the rest of the, and how is that? I mean, do you think about the rest of your life, or do you just kind of go like, this is my life for now? Because I mean, again, this is something that since you were a teenager, like you've been a pro wrestler, and you went, you sacrificed in many ways that I think a lot of wrestlers didn't do and understand. I mean, like, essentially, you essentially moved to Japan to work for, DDT, which was a smaller company.
Absolutely.
and worked hundreds of matches a year, doing all kinds of stuff that, I just remember, like with Mick Foley, he would say, like, if he regretted something, it was like doing so much early on, so that when he finally got to the big time, you know what I mean? It's like he didn't have as many years as if he had taken it easy. And on the flip side, for you or for Mick Foley, both, it's one of those things where, but had you not, you might have just been another wrestler.
Absolutely. Yeah. I could look at it as a necessary evil. It was certainly a sacrifice, but I also feel like it really helped for me to develop a career where, when promoters and bookers were willing to take a chance on me to keep the lights on for them, I just had to show up and show out. If I didn't show out, if I didn't hit that grand slam, if I didn't hit a home run, it just would have halted everything. And that was the case for DDT. DDT taking a chance on me to wrestle Coda in the best 2 out of 3 falls match. It was supposed to be a one and done. It was, hey, we have heard of this guy. We've seen him on the indies. At the time, it was Jersey All Pro Wrestling. And he apparently is a fan of what we do. Ibushi is this hot, young up-and-comer. They might be able to have a heck of a match together, and it'd be a great chance for Ibushi to prove himself to the DDT faithful as a guy that we can count on, and the guy that can carry this company to the next stage. And the match went better than we had expected, and it ended up winning the Samurai TV Indie Match of the Year, and that allowed for me to come back. And it was always supposed to be like, okay, you're going to come back, we're going to do the rematch, and so you'll get another trip out of this. So it always became like, oh boy, okay, so now I've got another Japan trip out of this. I thought I was possibly going to just not retire, but just be fine with having that as my career peak. But now I have another chance suddenly. So now the second match of Ibushi has to be incredible. And I thought, well, Ibushi and I have developed this real life friendship now. And is there a way where I can create some more longevity out of this? So I remember going to the boss, Ibushi and I, and we had said, we have this weird idea. Now, hear us out. What if we were a tag team instead of continuing this rivalry? And rather than, I lose to Ibushi again in this rematch and I disappear, what if we kind of became, a thing? And they had said, oh, like Ibushi's like, he's far and away our top guy right now. Like he's getting us all of the articles in weekly wrestling magazine, Shikon Pro. He's the one that's getting, the outside media attention. He's the guy that we've kind of pegged as the guy to carry this company. So to put him in a tag team now, they're like, oh, we don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea. And they said, okay. And then Ibushi stuck his neck out and he said, like, okay, I believe in this too. He goes, if we screw this up, if this is if fans don't get with it, if they said like, hey, we'd rather have seen these guys mix it up into singles instead, then, Kenny's gone anyway. And we'll just go back to plan A. But we did the Golden Lovers thing and it worked out. And I remember having that feeling of pressure again, where it's like, okay, we're getting this one shot to make this tag team work. And this was at the time where, and it still is, of course, in current wrestling, where tag team wrestling is not really viewed as what you would slot in the main event. It's sort of kind of a secondary division to what the main event singles match would be. But we wanted to kind of create something different. And again, you brought up 93, Dave, earlier. Where like that's one of my favorite time periods in all of professional wrestling, where not only were the singles matches great, but you remember a lot of those tag matches as well. Like those really stick out.
Oh yeah.
We really wanted to be a tag team like that, where people would go to a show, they'd be willing to buy a ticket to watch a tag team main event. And the Golden Lovers thing worked out. It took off, and it really prolonged my career in DDT. And then it became, okay, now we're with the Golden Lovers at the forefront. We're selling out Crackwin Hall. And it's like, do we do it? And yeah, they pulled the trigger. They ran Ryogoku. We sold out Ryogoku. Then, things took off even more. Ibushi was getting called up by New Japan. I had the run with All Japan while still being a tight-knit unit with Ibushi. So it's like, do we take the next step? And then we sold out Budokan with, the promised singles match of Ibushi meeting me in the main event. And again, it was like, at no point did I really feel like, okay, I have to ease off the gas and save myself for something later on down the road. It was always like do or die, I felt, for me. So I don't feel like I'm in a situation where I could say that I wished I could have went easier, because I always felt that pressure where it had to be a home run, because there was no actual job security. There were no guaranteed contracts. It was always match to match to match to match. And it wasn't guaranteed until I signed full time with New Japan.
When you going back to Dakota, I mean, he had, at the same time you did, he had some major struggles physically and mentally. He went through a real bad time when he had I guess it was after the shoulder injury, which really until Wednesday night, I wasn't sure if that was it for him. I mean, in the sense of Wednesday night was a really, a lot of people, and I heard from a lot of people in the last couple of days of how uplifted they were, because, it's been 4 years since he had the shoulder injury. He did some comeback matches, and it was almost like it's not him. You know what I mean? It was, and all of a sudden it's like, does he have it? And then Wednesday it was like, he has it. He came back. You know what I mean? And, it wasn't, and again, it's not the same Kota Ibushi of 5 years ago, but it's a great Kota Ibushi, which is all you could ask for. I mean, but like when you and him, obviously you were always in contact with him. I mean, and you're out, he's out, you're in very different ways trying to come back to this business. I mean, like what, how did you kind of like, was it helpful to you, or did you kind of motivate each other? Because I know you went to Japan to be with him for a while too.
Yeah, no, it was, that's exactly what it was. We were very uplifting to each other. We would always sort of kind of workshop and brainstorm ideas. How do we do this? How do we pull this off? people have this expectation. We always kept using that word, this expectation. We said, what is it that the fans have it, or is this the expectation that we're placing on ourselves to be a certain way? And I think when we really changed our perspective as to what we could give to the wrestling world that could be just a little bit different, but could make everyone happy all the same, it's like, we have other talents. Ibushi doesn't have to do a Phoenix Splash every match. He doesn't have to do it. He doesn't have to do a sky twisting moonsault to the floor every match. He doesn't have to do that stuff. I mean, you're talking about a guy who is K2 level in kickboxing. And, I of course have the backbone of the jiu-jitsu backbone as well. And when we train together, we kind of help each other out. And it's like when we train in a ring, it's like we're leaning more on that stuff that we had done in our past for our conditioning and to be able to move around. Our wrestling training does not consist of us, taking crazy bumps or working on high flying or new dives. It is us relying on what we know and what's kind of been ingrained into us now, stuff that our muscle memory allows us to do no matter how beat up that we are. And, for me, it's a lot of my groundwork. It's my boxing. For Ibushi, his kickboxing. It's like, yeah, you had 2 broken ankles, but now that you've repaired one fully and the other one is, it's always going to be banged up. It's over a 20-year career now for him too. It's, we can always lean on that stuff. And luckily for us, there aren't many people that are throwing strikes like Ibushi. He can stick out just by being a striker. And when the wrestling stuff that he can do, everything that he does is still going to look incredible, but he doesn't have to do everything that he used to do. And again, I think Wednesday proves that the expectation that we had placed on ourselves was almost a little bit of a false expectation. They weren't expecting Ibushi to do, or at least by and large, most people weren't expecting Ibushi to do, crazy 630s, Phoenix splashes, moonsault, that type of stuff. They were happy seeing him just move well, sell well, bump well, and make his stuff, like lay his stuff in, make it count. There's no one that's throwing strikes like Ibushi. For my type of stuff, like even, just minor things, maybe the way that I sell, maybe the way that I do throw my strikes, maybe it's the way that I do, differentiate my bumps from other people. That in itself will be eye-opening moments for fans. That it keeps fans awake, it keeps them invested, it keeps them interested. So we had tools in our chest that we weren't relying on so heavily before, but it's like now we can, and it still kind of changes things up and still allows us to be special. And since we've been here, of course, he's been hanging with me, staying with me, and we train every day. And it's like, it's crazy how you probably know, like, as in shape as you are, Dave, especially, it's like as you age, it's very tough to train super hard and make improvements on a physique or your physical capabilities. You're just struggling to keep what you have. So there's
a point where you can't even do that. I just warn you, you approach a couple of decades in your future.
Right. So it's like, it's us doing what we're comfortable with, but pushing it hard while still trying to keep what we have, but also being very open-minded to relying on certain things that maybe we haven't put a higher importance or precedence on, so that we can stick out to the crowd.
As we wind this down, I did want to bring it back to AEW. You have a show, a big show next week, biggest show of the year. I wanted to, and Dave remembers this, but the first time that I was in the room when we interviewed you, I don't know if you and Brian had done one before that, Dave, but going back to, I believe it was February 2019 in Las Vegas.
The live one. We had interviewed, I think, right after the G1 win, before the Tokyo Dome, I think was the first time that I ever talked to you. Somebody set up the idea of us doing an interview when I'm
gonna have to go back and re-listen to that.
Yeah,
one.
that's the first one. Yeah.
So Dave and I we came in and there was a room. You guys had a bunch of rooms, and we interviewed you in person. And I was literally just there to make sure this thing recorded. Like, that's all I was there for. But then now, fast forward 6.5 years,
Yeah.
AEW has been around for a good chunk of years and is doing very well on television, doing very well on pay-per-view. Where, like, how do you see the company today? And also, just, where does pro wrestling go? The athleticism, the matches, you mentioned the lucha influence. Like, do you see, a trend or kind of the next wave of where the young wrestlers are going?
Well, I would say, much like a wrestling analyst would view wrestling, I try to analyze and predict the trajectory of where things are headed. And I remember I took a little bit of heat for this, and I didn't mean it even in a negative way, but I had said, hey, like, we're shifting towards kind of like an ADHD version of professional wrestling, where it's going to be TikTok clips and it's going to be special guests and influencers that are going to garner most of the attention for professional wrestling.
ADHD of sports as well is where we're headed, by the way, too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not just, I don't mean just in professional wrestling. This is across the board. All of my interests, even video games, TV shows, everyone kind of just wants things compressed. They want to be able to digest it as quick as possible and just get the gist of it right away. And I don't look at it as a positive nor a negative. It's just evolution. That's just where society is headed. And I do think that, which is why I brought up before, the way I would approach a match in Japan would be much different than the way I would approach it here, is because I think it's more of a Western philosophy to want to digest things as quick as possible. And that's just become the norm. And I don't think, again, I brought up Logan Paul, and I didn't mean it in a negative context whatsoever, where I said, like, hey, we could be looking at Logan Paul, and I said Mr. Beast, that was in jest, but I was just bringing up a name that has a humongous following and people would recognize immediately. I mean, with the amount of time that you have for preparation, I have no doubt in my mind that Logan Paul could probably, with the creative minds that are behind the driving force of WWE, they would be able to put something together that was probably pretty entertaining. Is it going to be pro wrestling as the way we knew it, as we grew up? No, of course not. But if the fans like it, if people are willing to buy it, if they are selling it by the hundreds and thousands, then that's just the way. That's just how history is going to dictate the way professional wrestling is going to move forward. So with current day AEW, I do think that we have been a little more grounded in the professional wrestling aspect of what we do on our shows. And again, that's not saying that, hey, we're better or we're worse. That's just how we've found our identity. And of course, we've used special guests. We've used Shaquille O'Neal. We've used Mike Tyson. We've used Snoop Dogg. We've used the Costco dudes. Like, it's you'll always have that in professional wrestling. It's a performance. You know what I mean? Especially on big shows, these just happen. It's natural. But for us, I feel like, and this is where it can become a double-edged sword. You may have, on any particular Wednesday night, or Collision even, a card where you'll look at it from top to bottom and you go, geez Louise, this is a free pay-per-view. What are you guys doing? You haven't hyped any of these matches up. They just released online one day and we're going to get these matches. This is insane. And again, the double-edged sword behind that is you go out there and you kill it in those matches. And then you have to get to a pay-per-view where the expectation is, all right, your regular Wednesday would have been this level of match. Now this is the pay-per-view. You guys better one-up yourselves. And it becomes this, it almost becomes like, it's like you're chasing the dragon and you don't want to get to a level where things become too physically demanding, too dangerous, too self-harm inflicting, where now you have younger guys who, and I've been there, guys in their 20s or early 30s, where they're like, hey, I can take the schedule. I can still ramp it up. And you feel that way until you can't. And my worry is that we're going to have these young guys with these incredible bright futures who are beating themselves up at an accelerated rate, so that when it comes time to place faith in a particular athlete or performer, and by that I mean put the belt on them, can they hold that belt in a healthy state for the long term? That's always my fear. I mean, I see the writing on the wall for me. You know, I already kind of know where I'm headed. I sort of already know the pace that I need to travel at, the pace that I need to perform at. And I already know I'm not invincible. I not only had the injury scares, but I've had the health scares too. So I know I've got to be very careful, and I need to pick and choose my moments. But I can't tell. It's just impossible. You can't tell a young person, hey, this is going to happen down the road. Trust you me. Everybody knows it, because I was one of them too. I'd be like, speak for yourself. I'm fine. Everyone just, it's just how it is.
The X-Pac, the X-Pac thing, right?
Sean
Dave?
Waltman, right? Yeah. The cycle of life. It's like, yeah, he was like, like you know, he did everything, and he was small and wouldn't have made it any other way.
Right.
And exactly. And all the veterans told him, don't do this. And he did. And the reality is that at his size, he never would have made it listening to them. And he didn't. But then he got old and hurt. And he's telling the young guys, and he said, like, it's almost like he goes, it's my responsibility as a veteran to tell the young guys this, knowing that they won't listen. And I thought that was like actually one of the more brilliant things I'd heard about the generational shifts in wrestling. And we all go through generation after generation. I mean, and you know, from me, one of the things, I don't know why it is, you know, I've always liked wrestling and understood the evolvement of it, because I've seen it for so long and just know this is what it does. And it doesn't offend me that it's not the same wrestling from 30 years ago. And it's not saying it's that I don't love the wrestling from 30 years ago. I mean, I do think that the quality, as far as, like, you know, there were guys back then, you know, and we all know who they are. They were phenomenal. And if they were around now, they would be phenomenal. But the thing now is everyone is really good. Like, a guy who was average, to me, can't make it in pro wrestling today. Whereas there were a lot of guys back then who were average. They were just guys. Like, now the level of the competition and the athleticism and everything, you've got to be good. And that makes it more difficult, because those top guys who really stood out then, you know, it's just like there's a lot of those kind of guys now, but it's a different version too, you know, and there are aspects of the old version that I miss, and there are aspects of the new version that I love, but it does change. And, you know, like with you in your career, the wrestling that you started, right, is completely different from the wrestling that you were in today. I mean, you've seen it with your own eyes, from starting in, you know, like in the independents, but seeing like the Bret Hart era and those guys. And then what you do now, you know, the accelerated, faster paced and more dangerous, but less dates. You know, it's like that whole thing of when you were talking about all that, the one benefit is that in another era, you at this stage, it would have been very difficult to work 10, 15 matches, whatever number of matches you're going to work.
Yeah.
Because they wanted you for 200 days. And now the nature of the beast is that, you know, you can be effective and make a lot of money. And there's other guys to pick up, you know, but you know, you don't have to be on TV every Wednesday night doing a match at all. You know, you can, you know, and it's for you at this stage, you know, I mean, it's like, it's very beneficial to you that wrestling has evolved to that period, you know, because it's, in that sense, it's probably extending your career too, don't you think?
A little bit, absolutely. No, in that sense, that's absolutely true. I'm very glad that we aren't a traveling house show brand, because it just wouldn't be. It already is very difficult to sustain. But if we were doing 5 dates a week and kind of just taking a bus all over America all the time with no time at home, number one, a lot of our performers are family men and women. So there would be that aspect of it where they would miss out on a lot of family time and personal events and all that. But of course, there's the wear and tear, and it would be a lot of wear and tear that you don't actually see. If we were a house show traveling brand, you'd get your couple episodes a week where, yes, you're on TV, and then you'd have, X amount of dates where, you were just making the towns. And I'm very glad in that regard that AEW decided from the offset, like, we're not going to be that. We are going to prioritize saving it all for when we're on TV. Everything is going to be seen to some degree, shape, form, or fashion. Yeah. But yep, it's like you said. Yep, absolutely.
All right, as we shut this down, we have the pay-per-view next Saturday, which I just looked on the website. Prime Video, Triller International, payperview.com, Fubo, YouTube, and then you can even go watch it at Dave & Buster's and Tom's in some areas. And then obviously the big show at the Rangers baseball field. Is there any last thing you want to mention about your match with Okada before we let you go? And you've been very gracious with your time as well.
No problem whatsoever. Again, this is a very special match to me. The series of matches that I've had with Okada have always been special, and I hold a near and dear place in my heart. So again, I may not always be around to do this type of stuff, but I will always give what I can to the professional wrestling world. So I hope to have a performance that people will enjoy, and a performance that I can be proud of, and hopefully other people can be proud of as well. And by and large, as a whole, I looked up and down that card, and I do this on purpose, where I don't want to know a lot of the finishes. And when I look at the card, I'm like, man, like, if you're to ask me, tell me who's winning all these matches, I couldn't with absolute certainty tell you. So I think there's a really cool unpredictability factor leading into this pay-per-view, which I think will be fun for our fan base as well. So you're going to get a lot of, I think, drama going into this card, and I think it'll be a great event.
One thing before you go, I don't know, like, it was funny when I watched Swerve and Will Ospreay as a team, and I think they teamed up twice.
Yeah,
it reminded me. It's like, and they've known each other for years and years and years, but the whatever it is, the synchronization, if that's even a word,
synchronization.
But I mean, it's when I was watching the way that those guys moved together, it reminded me of you and Coda, and it's like, and I've seen, maybe the Young Bucks, but I've seen very few teams like have that. It's not that they're always two individuals, and FTR is a very different style. They're excellent at what they do. They're great, but there's a certain movement fluidity that those guys had together. And I thought, like, and I don't know if it's the best thing for them to be a tag team because of, like you said, or they could be an unreal tag team. It was just really interesting just watching them. And it kind of brought back those memories to me of, when I used to watch you guys, and going back, like, going back to even like 2010, when you would do the New Japan stuff in the early matches, right? With like Devitt and Taguchi and that type of stuff, where it was kind of like, it's funny because when I first saw you, which was, I'd seen you on indies and everything, but I remember there was a match with in All Japan and then some matches in New Japan. So we're talking 2010, and it was almost like, you watch someone, and it was funny because when I was a kid watching Randy Savage was the same way, where you at first go like, wait a minute, it's like, this isn't it's like you have this feeling of how good people are, and it's kind of like, wait a minute, this guy's like way too good to be someone who is not, like top guy. And Ibushi was the same way, always, it was just like, because again, you were like DDT guys that were just being guests on the big show, and all of a sudden it's like, you think of DDT as being independent, lesser, and everything. You go on the big show, and it's like you're going to be weak next to these major league guys, and it's like, wait, you're blowing them away, and you're as good as like the ones who I think are the best guys. And it's like, it's just a really interesting thing, because I'm just like doing, whatever. But like with, it's like with Will and Swerve, it was like my first thought was like, what a team they would make. And then it's kind of like, yeah, but they probably shouldn't be a team. I mean, like, not that they shouldn't be a team for this match, but long term, they're a world champion guy. They're a world championship.
Want to spread out your resources a little bit for sure. I definitely get that feeling.
Yeah.
But if something is working and if something can become a commodity, there's no reason to fight it. Mm-hmm. I do think that idea of your top guys must be single performers and they must have singles matches. And I've heard that all my life as well, or not my life, my career, where, hey, if we're getting Kenny, it better be a singles match. Better be a singles match with no hijinks, no interference. It just wanted to be serious and hard hitting. Like, I'm sorry, but I feel like I have more to offer than that. And I want to prove that I can offer more than that. I want to be able to have great tag matches. I want to be able to have a great 3-way, 4-way. I want to be able to do a great battle royal. I want to be able to make people laugh if I need to, if that's the appropriate place to do it. I think in the sake of for Will and Swerve especially, I think they want to prove that too. They want to prove that they can be complete, all-rounded professional wrestlers. And if having a great tag team run is a way for them to do that and to show that, and if there's money in that and the fan base and the viewership goes up because of it, no reason not to do it.
All right, I think we're done here. But Kenny, I want to mention, or I just want to give you a compliment in that when Dave and I talk about guests, I've had the opportunity to interview a ton of wrestlers and historians and stuff, and I always tell Dave the two most thoughtful guests that we've had are yourself and Bryan Danielson. And I don't mean, I mean this in the way of, you ask a question and you guys actually think about the answer. You don't have like this patented answer.
It's not a canned answer at all.
Yeah, like it's not just doing media. And so I really appreciate that, because I think it gives people a little bit of an idea of, some of the things that you are thinking about in the ring. And I'll mention to Dave, I did get some feedback when I told someone we were going to interview Kenny, and they were like, "Oh, he's my favorite guest since Bruno Sammartino."
I said that.
And yeah, and so another person had told me that. And so, maybe down the line, over the years, you can still continue to come on this show and talk about all the wrestling clubs that you used to wrestle in, because that's Bruno's line. But no, I appreciate it. Good luck next weekend and everything, and with your health and all. So really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, very much appreciate it.
A lot of fun. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, we are going to talk a little bit more after the Kenny interview, which was tremendous as always. I found his answer on the question about kind of where the future of wrestling goes, like, really interesting, because if you think about AI, which we didn't talk about AI in general, but kind of AI, like everybody has this AI brain set right now as far as where the future of everything is going.
Yeah, because everything's changing so fast in every profession, it feels like to me.
And so his idea of where, kind of how people absorb content, him being that person as well. And I see the same thing, where all the trends are going for stuff, and which is fascinating, because the only thing that really draws television viewership anymore are these long sports events.
Yeah, the sports events are like the highest rated stuff on TV now.
Yeah. Just great stuff. But we wanted to mention, so anybody who's a subscriber to this website saw the email from this morning about the issue. But are you really going to try and at least put a scaled down version of an issue out from losing all of your stuff?
I'll try to send something in today. I don't know how much. I'm able to salvage, like Brian did a lot of reports, and I have all my notes, that I send to myself from the week. So I have that, but the long form stories, unfortunately, they're gone. It was I'm very, very sorry to everybody. About this, it's just one of these things that, I didn't even really, it was just something happened here, too much was going on at the same time. And, I lost the issue, and it was a computer glitch, and Garrett has saved me twice in past years when this has happened,
Just
and
couldn't do it last night.
just couldn't do it last night. Everybody tried. It was like
Jeremy tried. I know I was texting John Muse because his job isn't more, I think, a different area of computer expertise, but he was trying to come up with solutions. We were all trying to just figure out if we could find this thing, and it was impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I saved it. They had turned the power off here because they were doing work, and I saved it. But I made some different things were going on, and I just like whatever. So anyway, there's stuff, and I'm going to put some stuff up, and get the star ratings out and things like that. That it's not the full issue, and it's not the in-depth stuff. Get some. Brian did TV reviews all week long. There'll be something.
You have the UFC stuff as well, right?
I have the UFC coverage from Ryan. Yeah. So I got that all. So I was working on that when I woke up this morning, and I think I can get something done today at some point. I got to go out tonight. Obviously, it's the 4th and everything. And next week there'll be no problems. I just I had some, like stuff. I had a lot of stuff on, and again, it probably wouldn't have interested a lot of people, but and I talked a little bit about with Brian the other night about Kevin Ioli on Monday. Because to me that's like a big deal, only because like where people have missed the story on Kevin is that like he was the first reporter. I was the first reporter ever to cover MMA from day one. Okay. And I always covered it as whatever it was, kind of like pro wrestling-ish and then sport-ish and sport, as it evolved. Kevin was the first mainstream guy as the editor of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sports editor, who covered it like, he was a boxing guy who covered it like he would cover boxing,
right? Straight,
not like, oh, these guys are going to kill each other. Oh, they're punching each other on the ground. None of that. Since he learned it as a sport, somewhat from me. He was a reader of the Observer when he first got into the MMA and was learning it. And so in Nevada, and I mean, again, it started where sports writers, and it would have happened either way, but where sports writers covered it like this is a sport, just like boxing, just like kickboxing, as opposed to this is this thing. So I thought that again, and he had his contacts with Dana and Lorenzo and knew them from the boxing world. And, and then with Yahoo, we were the first the first major site to cover it in the manner that we did. So it was pioneer work, things changed and everything. And, I just always wanted him to get that due. So I wrote a nice story on him that unfortunately I lost that one. And
the other thing about Kevin that I think was valuable to his skill set, which is because he came from boxing and because he learned how to deal with promoters, I think it enabled him to create a relationship with Dana White. Now, he got a lot of criticism for that relationship.
He was friends with Dana before Dana got UFC, because I knew Dana from when he started UFC. Kevin knew him before I did, just from being around boxing guy, and they were both boxing guys. So, but you're right in the sense of he had respect from the people who were sports guys. You know what I mean? Like, and Dana being one of them, it was like, there was something like, and I think I did too, when Dana started, it was like, okay, Dave, does the Wrestling Observer, the Mark Ratner knows him, Joe Silva knows him, whatever they, and I know him. And then Kevin was like, Kevin lives in Las Vegas. He's the sports editor. So of course, you're going to have a rapport that's different from someone who never did any journalism. It's not knocking any of those people. Some of those people turned out to be really good, at what they did. But yeah, so there was that, but I think that, I guess I'll just do the other one too, is I did a lot on Punk and the Saudi thing, and I don't really want to go into it too much, but I did talk to some people in WWE about the whole thing. And it's like, the deal, I again, it was, obviously it was not this impromptu thing where all of a sudden somebody out of nowhere asked him a question and then he just thinks to react and apologize and all that. I mean, it was like he was going there to apologize. What he's the only one who can say what he thinks, and probably, you know, the impression that they had that I was given is that, you know, everyone, Saudi Arabia, TKO, CM Punk, they're all on board, and this is just what we got to do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you could argue that maybe they shouldn't have done it. Maybe, you know, it makes him look bad by doing it. They thought it makes him look good. They thought that was the right thing to do. If he had any qualms, nobody knows him. You know, I mean,
okay, here's my question.
Yeah.
You said that they think it makes him look good. How much of this was for the Saudi Arabia relationship? Because they had to have known that he made that tweet years and years and years ago. They also know that he's one of their biggest stars. WWE wants this relationship to continue. There's a possibility of a WrestleMania-like business deal at some point.
Well, for sure. There's going to be a WrestleMania there at some point. There's already Royal Rumble. You know, one of the things also that was made clear to me is like the old days of, you know, conscientious objectors and all this, right? It's like everyone has come to grips that this is just what people do when it comes to business, you know, and it's just like, you know, you can not like it, you know what I mean? You can have the moral thing, you know, it's like I'll sit there and do the moral thing, and it's like everyone's doing it. This is not just, you know, look, boxing's even more in bed than WWE. Boxing's basically run that way, and that is what boxing is. MMA will be.
TKO is deeper into that with boxing.
Yeah.
With their new promotion.
With their new promotion being funded by them. So yes, they have a huge relationship. I don't know if Saudi Arabia, you know, went to them and asked them. I mean, the way it was said to me is that everybody just thought that this was the right thing to do, and they did it. And, you know, the kind of the thing of, you know, when you're dealing with governments, you know, in this day and age, it was kind of like, you know, everyone's bad. You know what I mean? It's just the nature of the business. And, you know, that's, you know, it's like when John Cena had to apologize about saying Taiwan was a country. It's like, to me, you know, like on the outside, I'm going like, Taiwan is a country, you know, but they're talking about, you know, his films maybe not being allowed in China or whatever. Right. He had no choice.
Right.
And Punk, you know, whatever his thoughts are, good for him. You know, I mean, it's like, if you wanted CM Punk to be Kurt Flood, okay, he's not. He doesn't want to be, and he's making a lot of money. And I understand from his perspective. At the same time, I thought it made him look bad in the sense of people saying like, look at that hypocrite, and they could have quelled it and just had him not do anything, and people still would have said it, but it became a bigger story when he did that. And when they made it part of the storyline of the match, too.
That's the part that is weird.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have made it part of the storyline of the match.
The other weird part to me was Triple H's comments after the show. That's why I was wondering if it was Saudi Arabia influenced, was because of the way that he commented at the end, you know, saying that Punk showed growth or something or whatever he said.
Well, that's the message that they want, is that he has grown up and he's not a hothead anymore. And his message was, well, he was just, you know, he was mad at the Miz over something, and he didn't really mean it about Saudi Arabia.
He's had more hot-headed moments since then, though.
Well, that's for sure. I know, but I think that their thing of saying that was pretty much, that is that is what they want people to think, that this guy has grown up and now he is mature, and as a mature person, you know, he made a mistake saying that. And I think that there's a group of people who just like, that's the CM Punk we like, the one who's going to tell it like it is. And, you know, I mean, they do things there, you know, I mean, the you know, being gay is a crime there, and journalists are in prison for telling the truth and all that. And it's like, and he's the guy standing up for that. And, you know, it's like, that's, you know, that's not what the company wants. And he's got to, you know, he's got to do what he's got to do. And if you look, you know, it's like, I can look at him and say that, but I also, you know, it's just again, like, it's just stuff that you do. You can view him however you want to view him. You know, and I think that you know, obviously WWE by Levesque saying that. They want you to view him as growing up and it was a hothead and all that. And this is the mature reaction that you do, because now the thing is the Royal Rumble's going there. And like I was told, it's like before it was one of those things, Bryan Danielson didn't want to go, okay, you got your objections. This is the reason why. Sami Zayn, was told not to go. Now he can go. Kevin Owens, you go through all those guys. Everyone goes. That's just all there is. It's not I don't say it's not a choice, but it's basically you go, the Royal Rumble's there. It's part of your job. It's not, it's normalized. It's like exactly what some people, when this thing started, I don't want to say feared, but what did happen, why it all happened was to normalize Saudi Arabia. We get the picture of the beautiful sky and the beautiful buildings. And
if you put Rumble and WrestleMania there, talent who wants to be a part of these big shows, they're not going to say no, right?
Well,
or they're not going to try and get out.
They're not going to say no to the Night of Champions either anymore. Those days are like, basically what I was told is like those days are over. Like everyone, the relationship is much different. At first, like they didn't want to send Aleister Black because they're afraid he would offend them, and it's like Aleister Black went, everyone's fine. Women go, everyone's fine. It's like they have to be dressed a certain way. But it's not like, there were strides made. And this is just normal business. It's normal business for, UFC is going to do it. Ari Emanuel would be, was more of an about face than Punk ever was. If you even say Punk was an about face. Because, Ari, after the Khashoggi thing, he would not do business with them. And he hired a bodyguard because he was afraid they might come after him. And now he's front and center. It's his company, and they embrace them, and they both embrace each other. Especially because, I think it's Dana more than anyone. Dana's always wanted to get into boxing, and Turki Al-Sheikh just thinks like Dana and Vince McMahon are the greatest promoters who've ever lived. And through the relationship with Dana and Vince, Nick Khan is fantastic at what he does. Wanted him aboard. And now they're going to go into the boxing world. So it's just what it is. But I guess the main gist of what I wrote as far as the factual thing is like, he didn't get paid extra to do this. He didn't get paid extra to go. This is your job. This is what you do. It wasn't off the cuff, just a shocking thing that the guy asked the right question. You got the answer. Not completely different from our Kenny Omega interview today, where we, what I mean? It's like where nothing was staged, so to speak. But they wanted that message there. They wanted this story closed, and that's what it is. And you can view it however you want to view it. But just wanted, a lot of people I think had some misconceptions or some feelings, and I understand where you're coming from, and it was my gut reaction too. Mm-hmm. But that's just it's just doing business today, and they're it's like. Is it bad that everyone endorses that? In a sense, I feel bad about that. At the same time, it's like there's, I cover the wrestling business, and there's not one of these guys, not Sam Mushnick or Paul Bosch or any of these guys, that in the same situation would have refused to do business with these guys, especially now. Maybe some would have, right after the Khashoggi thing, and Vince was not one of them. There may have been some. There were people who refused to do business then, years ago. Now everyone does. It's just it. It's just money rules. And wrestling's always been about money rules. Money determines wrestling. It's not a bad thing. It determined wrestling when we were kids. The pure wrestling that you loved was actually promoters who only cared about making 15 extra bucks. You know what I mean, or whatever it was. I mean, they were penny pinchers and everything like that. I mean, it's. And the wrestlers had to work, way hard, and the wrestlers have never had it better. The business has never been better from a financial standpoint. Those are all good things. I mean, has it changed? Yeah, it's changed, and they're, some people romanticize it, and sometimes I do too, but that's just where we are now. So.
Did you have an update to the Britt Baker discussion?
So the only thing I wanted to say was that, I've seen the stuff. I only say that there's two direct people who know, which are obviously Tony Khan and Britt Baker. And I just wanted to point out that neither denied anything, neither confirmed anything. I'm sure that neither right now would confirm anything until something's done, but nobody denied anything either, so that's where we're at. I don't have any new stuff. I know people in the company who think that it's just one of those things and she'll be back. Other people think that she's gone and wants to go. I don't think that she would. Again, at her age, 34, your clock, I think she's 34. Her clock is turning, and I think she wants to be in action, unless she's hurt or ill, which you remember the last time she was gone for a long time. We later found out that, and I knew that there were some health issues, but I didn't realize how serious. And that's the reason she was gone for so long, was because she had serious issues. And maybe, again, I don't know. They kept that quiet. So I just wanted to update everyone on that. I don't have a good answer other than the answer I have is that nobody's denied the story either.
All right. And you mentioned Commander.
Yeah. So he had done some talking that he hopes to be back soon. I saw a photo of him from, I believe, Tuesday night. He went to a show in Mexico. He had a big old brace on his knee. And, it kind of, one of those things of these guys, when we've talked, and we talk about all the time, whether it's the Moscow Doradas and Neons and Commander that are just taking this thing to that level, is you're going to get your injuries, and it's sad and but it's reality. Hopefully he can, come back all the way. I mean, Vikingo is like the guy, you know what I mean? Like Vikingo did all of that stuff. We knew he was going to wear his body out. He's still very good. You've got, as time goes on with every young wrestler, you've got to learn to be more than just spectacular, because the spectacular, like you have to be more cerebral. But hopefully he can come back, because he was, Commander was one of the most exciting wrestlers to watch. Even without the push, the guy's really been good. I mean, and in Mexico, I mean, he's really become respected as a star. And if he would have been, he's getting main event bookings with the top guys. If he would have been, I think that Bandito really had this fantastic 2-week period in Mexico that really has revitalized him in Mexico, especially made him a real superstar in Mexico. I think if Commander would have been on those shows and been in the main event of the Ring in Mexico, Fantastica Mania, like he was supposed to be, and probably been on the Wednesday show, where I'm sure he would have been on that show and been in a standout role, that his Mexican profile would have gone way, way up. So I think that it's sad that he, missed that, but he will have opportunities in the future. And hopefully, he comes back 100%, but I just saw the big brace on his knee, and, it's just the nature of, unfortunately, the move that made him is the move that, led to him being injured, because he was doing that rope run thing, which is what everybody looks forward to seeing in his match. And, he slipped, and, and the same thing, like with Neon, he's doing that in all these matches. And, he slipped once, but he came back and he wasn't hurt bad, I guess. But, and I do want to bring that up as far as the Saturday show, that no one's talked about, is that they are in Texas. It is July. I lived in Texas, not far from there. It is hot as hell. You're going to have a lot of matches with a lot of sweat and a lot of moisture and a lot of springboard guys. You can look up and down the card of the guys who do springboard stuff. I hope that I hope that there's no problems there, and guys don't slip off the ropes, especially on this biggest show of the year for AEW. But, it's something to understand. That is part of that thing, is that these ropes are going to, it's not going to be like an indoor air conditioned arena. These ropes are going to be sweaty, and it's going to be tougher. And a lot of those guys rely on really impressive rope stuff, especially in a lot of the big matches. So hopefully everything works out for everyone and you get that great show. They're at, the last number I had, was 19,500 from several days ago.
I'd seen that they maybe had reached 20.
They may have, and WrestleTix may have a new number. I haven't looked. Like I said, it was a couple of days ago. I would presume they're right at 20, just based on normal buying patterns. They were doing, about 1,800 to 1,000 a week. So they're probably at about 20. They're probably at about, closing in on 2.6 million, maybe not quite there. It's a good number. Whatever they end up at, whether it's going to be 21 or 24 or whatever that thing, it's good. It's real good. It's the biggest, double their biggest gate in history.
In the U.S.
Right? And double the biggest gate for anyone other than WWE in the history of the U.S. And I can argue inflation and all that stuff, but even inflation adjusted. But then the next argument after inflation adjusted is everyone, well, ticket price for everything or higher. Absolutely true. Ticket price for everything or higher.
Taylor Swift cannot be breaking as many records as she's breaking without her being able to raise her own ticket prices.
Yeah. So it's just the nature of the beast. But I think that the key to this is that from a business standpoint, this is a very successful show. Is it going to be as successful as SummerSlam's going to be? No, they're not as big. They can't challenge WWE. It's not going to happen. And for AEW, they have to be, you have to judge them by, they are the number 2 promotion with a super strong number 1, and they're hanging in there, and they're doing well, and they're providing good wrestling. And, I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, want to see them fail, and they didn't fail, and they're not failing. Tony seems like when this promotion, Tony seems the happiest. He's making the most money he's ever made out of wrestling. In his own way, he shut up a lot of critics, but they didn't shut up. And that's kind of where we're at when it comes to that stuff. With the 300th, we talked about it the other day. I would have liked it to have been more special, in the ratings. The ratings, okay, so it's really quickly on the ratings thing before we go. So it was the deal was they did 0.16. They were behind. The soccer game was actually really big. And when you look at the ratings, you see the 0.40 on FS1. You don't see the Univision number. The Univision number, which I don't know, but it dwarfs, when it comes to big time soccer, Univision dwarfs FS1. So they're probably way over, and Univision Deportes did a big number. They're going to be way over, a 1.0 and 18 to 49. It's real solid competition, strongest since the NBA playoffs. The baseball game did surprisingly good that night. And the July 4th weekend, NXT, I looked up last year for July 4th, the numbers, and the NXT number was real down. I didn't look up the AEW number, but that week is usually, that whole week is usually down for wrestling viewership. I know Big Bang Theory did nothing. It didn't even chart. I couldn't even find the rating. And this is the first week. This is the first week where I could not find the Big Bang Theory lead-in rating ever. The last week was 0.09, so this is probably way under that. And I guess the one, they were pretty solid. The Osprey match, they did lose a lot of viewers. The Hurt Syndicate stuff was solid, stayed the same. The Max match was, the Max 4-way, the Young Bucks match pretty much stayed at a pretty solid level where where you would expect. And then especially with younger viewers, there's 2 stats that really stood out. And this is the Ibushi and Okada match did phenomenally well with 2 groups. And
I was very interested in that because, 2 Japanese wrestlers whose careers were much bigger in New Japan, or at least
and
from a history perspective, and a while ago. And I can't really get the sense of how AEW fans who may not have been into that era of New Japan feel about Okada, because I can't really figure it out.
He always gets a big pop. I think that when he comes, people know he's a superstar. But he's not generally been a ratings mover at all.
Right.
He has good matches and sometimes great matches. I think that when you go to the building, he's one of the guys that you pop for because he carries himself like a superstar and everyone knows he is. But yeah, it's funny because I didn't think this would be a good ratings match, and it ended up being incredible to 2 groups. One was women. Women 18 to 49, it went from 54,000 to 120,000. This kind of growth is unheard of. You know what I mean? And for 18 to 34s, it was 53,000 to 115,000. So it started very, very low. Very, very low in both of those numbers. The women number was low. The 1834 was very low, but it ended up very high compared to usual. This usual, our 2025 normal, not 2022 normal. So if you're looking at that match was a big success, and it grew with men too, but it grew more with women and with 1834s than anyone else. Whatever lesson there is, I don't really have it. But whatever it was, that match was a big success.
All right, let's wrap things up here, which is a question that I was wondering about, and I don't even know if you had this in the Observer. How are the Evolution tickets?
I don't have that, and I don't have the Evolution or the Saturday main event. I'm sure they're doing well.
The Evolution show just seems to be so poorly promoted, and I'm sure some of it is because they're promoting multiple events the same weekend.
Yeah,
but it just I can't imagine.
Saturday night's main event is the big event for the weekend, not the pay-per-view.
I can't imagine.
Why would you do
promoting this show the way that they're doing and expecting it to be like the success?
Why would you even do a pay-per-view the same weekend you're doing a Saturday night's main event? Other than we know why.
Yeah.
We know they're trying to flood the market,
causing chaos.
Cause chaos. And it's funny because it's like again, that show, and to show what I mean by that show was booked for July the 5th. That show was booked for Saturday night this weekend.
Tomorrow. It would have been tomorrow.
I think maybe you go like, well, that's not really a great night for a PLE, and it's not. But the fact that that was their original night, they did book the building. They booked the Mohegan Sun for that show months ago, and then they moved it. So that just tells you, it's just that's just the reality of everything as well.
All right. So you and Brian are back Sunday?
Sunday.
Okay. Hopefully, you do get a bit of a skeleton issue out there. I know that you're probably bummed that you lost a couple stories, but sometimes, make human mistakes happen, technological mistakes happen, and you just got to kind of bounce back. So sorry about all the stuff and that we couldn't fix it or help you fix it, but that is, sometimes those are just the breaks.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I want to thank you publicly, you and Jeremy both. Although I thanked him a lot already, but for above and beyond trying, to save the issue. And I tried to get as much of the key stuff in. I mean, like, as far as like, I'll have all the star ratings up for the matches if that's what people are interested in. The detailed news stories, unfortunately, no, but I'll try to catch up on as much of that as I can in the next week. And I'm sorry, like I said, I'm sorry. And if you know me, Garrett knows me.
Yeah,
just knows how this is. I don't react well to this at all. I put so much into this work, and it's I feel like I feel like I was sitting there with laid out a 4.5-star match in my head. And I fell off the ropes and fell to the floor and couldn't continue. I was Doki in the Desperado match at the Tokyo Dome. That's which it's a bad analogy. But and then one more thing before we go, I really was, I really liked the interview with Kenny today.
Yeah, that was great.
It was great. Yeah.
All right, thanks to Kenny and for Dave. I am Garrett. To everyone, thanks for watching and listening.